So just one last video here, kind of explaining how a camera obscura works, and I want to show you guys some of the pictures that I took as well. One last note with these camera obscuras is that even if you can't find the exact materials that they have in the Instructable or the exact materials that I use, you should still be able to make it work. At the very least, I'd love for you guys to find a box that you guys can use. Kind of try and make it as dark as possible. Punch a hole. It doesn't even need to be through aluminum, but even just with a pencil and the cardboard, you can punch a hole and cut out another hole to look your eye through. And at the very least, then you can get a rough idea of what a camera obscura is and how it works. So if you can do that with a decent sized box, even if you can't take a picture with it, then that's totally fine. I'd just love for you guys to all at least be able to see what's going on inside there. Now, if you can, building one of these is awesome. The Instructable used a washer. I didn't. I just taped aluminum foil over my little hole there. You don't need to have white paper or paint on the inside, but I think it makes it look kind of nice. It gives you a nice kind of bright image at the end as opposed to being on that kind of dull cardboard. Yeah, and some little things like that. So it'll take some trial and error, but give it a try. Maybe do the best that you can. And for example, taping your phone onto there, you don't even need to tape it. You can even just hold it in place and take a picture, and it should still work okay. But give it your best shot. And alternatively, if you can't get it to work, I want you to write a paragraph kind of explaining how a camera obscura works, which is kind of what we're going to address here. So first things first, I'll show you guys some of the photos that I ended up getting. This was my first kind of favorite photo that I ended up taking, and this is of my teepee, or the teepee in my parents' backyard. You can tell it's pretty blurry, and it's also upside down, right? Most of your photos are going to be coming in upside down. We'll explain a little bit why that is in a second. But this is what you end up getting. It's nice in photo software. You can always rotate it and flip right its setup, so you can actually see the image as it was, and it makes a little bit more sense then. But it's kind of cool. Another thing of note is that the teepee, or that your images are not only going to be flipped upside down, but they're also going to be flipped left to right. So which is also kind of an interesting thing about how light works and how light travels and how these images actually work, which we'll explain. So one thing I wanted to point out is that this was the same location, but I just messed with the exposure, right? So in this case, I think I kept it open for 1 second. And in this case, I kept it open for 2 seconds. So it got significantly brighter, right? Because it was allowing more light waves to strike the camera lens, or to strike the camera's kind of digital sensors. And so it ended up with a brighter image. This was another one playing around with a different location, just kind of got a different feel. And this was one that was actually very different. What I did was I wanted to mess around with controlling the size of the pinhole. And on this one, I actually put on some aluminum foil and retaped aluminum foil, made an even smaller pinhole using an actual pin, the smallest one that I could find. And I got this it's darker, significantly darker. This was also a 2 second exposure, significantly darker, but you can tell it's a lot sharper than this image here, right? So it's a lot sharper, you get a lot more detail. So it's kind of fun to be able to mess around with some of those kind of things and see what you can get. But real quickly, how exactly does this camera obscura work, and how does this relate to what we talked about with the ray model of light? Well, if I have my teepee here, for example, and if I have my little camera obscura, my box, and I have this little eye drawn in here to kind of represent your camera lens, or you could do your eye if you're just using an old-fashioned camera obscura, not even taking a picture, just looking through it. So this is how it works. Out here in the real world, you've got your object, and this object is being kind of bathed in light. In my case, it was from the sun, but you could also light it up yourself with a flashlight or a lamp. And so there's light coming in from the sun. It's bouncing off and reflecting off of the teepee and all the other objects, all the hills and stuff in the background. And it's bouncing off those, and because it's a rough surface, it's kind of bouncing off in all directions, right? So it's bouncing off in all directions off of this, and some of those, right, actually end up going, so from the top here, some of those actually end up going through my pinhole, right? And if we represent it kind of traveling as a straight line going through the pinhole, then the top of my teepee here, right, some of those wavelengths